Hello, it's Carlos from the Ayahuasca Foundation. Thanks again for joining me on this call. This is the second episode of a 10-part series on preparation, participation, and integration. And while it's specific to preparing for an ayahuasca retreat like the ones that we offer through the Ayahuasca Foundation down in Peru, I do feel like many of the things that I'll be discussing apply to preparation for all kinds of things, namely any healing endeavor, but really for all types of experiences that we might encounter in our lives. And they're worthy of our consideration at the very least, if not implementation. So when most people think about preparation with regard to going to an ayahuasca retreat, for example, they usually think about behavioral changes, and often those are focused on their consumption, mainly what they are going to eat or stop eating. A lot of those things imply stopping eating pork or red meat, for example, or stopping the consumption of salt or sugar or oil or things of that nature. And I do think that that's a good idea and worthy of consideration. But I think that oftentimes we don't understand the entirety of the opportunity that is available with those behavioral changes. And also, I think that we sometimes neglect that we don't just consume through our mouth, that we also consume a great deal through our eyes and our ears. So in terms of considering your consumption and how you might want to make changes to improve your readiness or your preparedness for something like an ayahuasca retreat, I think it's important that you consider, what am I consuming through my eyes? What am I consuming through my ears? And also, of course, what am I consuming through my mouth? And I think that the goal with your consumption, at least in terms of food, but then again, also through your eyes and ears, with what you're seeing and what you're hearing, is that you want to reduce stimulation. And by reducing stimulation, you increase sensitivity. And that's kind of at the core of those behavioral changes on a physical level. And so I do feel like it is very beneficial to reduce stimulants like oil, sugar, salt, alcohol, caffeine, recreational drugs, sexual stimulation as well. And to consider that in terms of how much am I stimulating myself through what I'm looking at, through my eyes, and how much am I stimulating through my ears. And the reduction of that, or the quieting of the self, increases sensitivity. And sensitivity is equal to awareness, provided that we're paying attention to the impact of those senses. And so that, to me, is at the heart of the goal of the preparation. Again, self-awareness. So if I reduce my sensitivity, if I reduce the amount of stimulants and increase my sensitivity, I have the opportunity to increase my awareness. And it's through that amplification or expansion of awareness that I can unlock understanding on a deeper level, clarity in my vision, my truth, in my self-perception, and my understanding and my role in this world. And so when we decide to make changes to what we're consuming, we're doing it almost as an experimental method. It's a means to an end. It's not the end itself. Oh, I stopped drinking alcohol, for example. No, I'm going to stop drinking alcohol to see what happens when that reduction of stimulant increases my sensitivity, and I want to take advantage of the opportunity for expanded awareness. Maybe I realize when I stop drinking that I can recognize or trace the craving for alcohol, and I can bring my awareness to how I was feeling, maybe physical sensations, or maybe my emotions and feelings, or maybe my thoughts just prior to the craving, that the craving itself might be in response to. Oftentimes we're fulfilling that craving because we're self-soothing or coping or responding or reacting to something that we don't enjoy, an uncomfortable feeling, stressful energy. And so understanding that energy, that driving force that creates those cravings, can be really helpful if we're going to be preparing for a healing endeavor, because most likely it's not whether or not we've been drinking alcohol that is actually the problem. It's what the alcohol was being used to soothe or to cope. Maybe that's the same when we decide to stop eating sweets, for example. Maybe that's the same when we stop choosing to watch certain things or to listen to certain things. We recognize that we were using those devices, habits, activities as a way to self-soothe or to cope emotions or thoughts or sensations that were troubling for us, that were challenging for us, that were a struggle for us, that brought us some type of discomfort or pain. And that's okay that we develop those habits. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary to develop those habits. If you're a child and you have experienced trauma, then it actually is really helpful in order to get through certain experiences to develop self-soothing techniques or coping mechanisms. The trouble is when those self-soothing techniques and coping mechanisms continue past the point where we still find benefit from them and bring us into a detrimental state of being. That's when we know that we have a lot more trouble. And that's when we know that when we have gained maybe greater maturity, greater inner strength or courage, fortitude, resilience, then we want to be able to readdress whatever it is that we were coping for or soothing and be able to resolve those situations. And by making these behavioral changes, we give ourselves the opportunity to trace or unlock and discover what it is that those habits are responding to. And usually those are a type of memory that may have led to misinterpretations, that led to detrimental perceptions, or that led to misinterpretations about who we are, our value, and whether or not we are worthy of the life that we're living, or of love of from others or ourselves, or whatever that might look like. But those insights are, to me, far more powerful and more impactful than whether or not we ate that cookie or drank that beer or did whatever the behavior was itself. So again, the goal for reducing stimulation in our consumption is not because of the value of the reduction, although there is value in that, in the increase of sensitivity. But to me, it's more valuable to have the opportunity to gain a deeper insight into the energy behind the craving for those activities, if that makes sense. So ultimately, it is a process of mindfulness, and that process of mindfulness is what brings us into our awareness of what is happening now. I feel a craving because I stopped or made the decision to stop consuming something. Now I open the door for a greater awareness for when that craving for that activity occurs, for me to be aware of the sensations, emotions, and thoughts that were leading up to that craving, such that I gain insight into what I really need to be giving my attention to in this healing process. Does that make sense? I hope so. Now, one of the things that's going to drive that awareness is curiosity. Curiosity is definitely the word of the day for this episode. And really, I think that curiosity is one of the most important features of the mind of a human being. And maybe it's the most important feature of the mind of any living being. It is innate in us. It is the ultimate motivation to learn, And we are constantly wanting to learn, provided we give ourselves the freedom to explore those curiosities. There's a reason why curiosity is built off the word cure. Curing and curiosity are two aspects of the same endeavor of healing. So I think that it's very important to instill curiosity, to foster this innate curiosity, which sometimes means to remind ourselves of that childhood curiosity that we were born with, but unfortunately may have allowed to fade, or for reasons against our own desires have been blocked or restricted in some way. So we want to revive our curiosity, and there is one way that I think does that very, very well, which is to spend time in nature. Nature to me is constantly instilling us with curiosity because there's so much mystery. Take a walk outside, very quickly you see a tree. Why did it grow that way? Why did this branch grow that way and then that branch grow that way? Why are the leaves of this tree shaped like this? And why are the leaves of that tree shaped like that? Why does this tree produce a fruit like this? Why does that tree produce flowers like this? And on and on and on about all the elements of nature. There's just a million questions that can't really be answered, even if we can name it or explain it in some way. Ultimately, it is just full of mystery, as is the mystery of life itself and our own being. And that to me helps to foster this curiosity to ask similar questions about myself. How did I come to be this way? What is the story of my experiences that led me to see the world that I see through my eyes now, and as I interpret it through my mind now? And that to me is how I view the preparation process, is that you're intentionally creating these experiments by making changes to your lifestyle such that you create opportunities that increase sensitivity and allow the opportunity for expanded awareness through the process of curiosity, such that you're able to reveal the true causes, the root energies that inspire responses and reactions. Some might be positive, but particularly the ones that are detrimental, such that we can resolve those matters, resolve those energies, perhaps let go of them or correct misinterpretations, and then cease to create the energies that might lead to responses that are detrimental to our well-being. Now, one of the key parts of working with ayahuasca is that it is not just a plant, it is not just a drink that contains certain chemicals like MAO inhibitors and dimethyltryptamine that act upon our biology, at least not the way that it is seen in indigenous cultures. In indigenous cultures, ayahuasca is a spirit, a very benevolent, caring, and powerful spirit that interacts with us. And it is through our interactions with this spiritual dimension and the spirits of these higher frequencies that we are able to unblock certain channels of energy, let go of certain energies, reveal through better clarity and understanding that we are holding false beliefs, or to correct and resolve certain traumas or mistakes in our understanding and perceptions about who we are. And those spirits have consciousness. They are beings, and they are capable of communication. And so when we're out in nature and we're fostering this curiosity, allow that curiosity to spill into, let's see if I can communicate with these elements of nature. That tree is very interesting to me. It's very fascinating. I have a lot of questions about nature of its bark, why it grows the way that it does, why it expresses certain flowers or fruits or leaves the way that it does, its colors. All of these things might be questions that come from the fostering of curiosity and my experience with this element of nature. What if I try speaking to this tree? What if I try some level of communication? What if I invite that ability to share energies and resonate in some way that might gain meaning for me? Let's see what happens if I do that. Now, in the case of ayahuasca, that might mean to introduce ourselves to ayahuasca, even if we're not in the presence of the vine itself, to introduce ourselves to the being of ayahuasca, to the spirit of ayahuasca. We can also introduce ourselves to the spirit of a plant or an animal or an element of nature. And let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens if I open my curiosity and expand my awareness in an attempt to connect and commune with an element of nature. Do I feel different? Do I notice different sensations? Do I notice different emotions? Do I notice different thoughts? Are there any changes that I think might be significant or worth observing? And then maybe I should write them down. And maybe I should continue to explore that and see if I find some deeper understanding there. Maybe there's some insight that might be valuable for me. I don't know. It's worth giving a shot though. So I hope that this was a helpful episode for you. I look forward to making more. Next one will be our final on the preparation, and then we'll dive into the participation elements of it. But I think that we're making some progress in setting the groundwork of how our consciousness works in the preparation process and how that affects our thoughts, our emotions, and our sensations in a way that reveals what could be the most important aspects that we'll deal with in the healing process. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you come back for episode 3. Have a great day.